It's happening now. And now again. You feel that? There goes another one. Another pinpoint in time that's irrevocably changed everything forever. Another one of the universe's infinite axes we've just grabbed a hold of and spun around, like snagging a pole while running full throttle. We've always known about these turning points, always talked about them, whether it's Stephen Hawking's computer voice outlining his impenetrable science of multiverse quantum physics, or the Hindus' cautious contemplations of an inexhaustible expanse of alternate universes, each ruled by a unique set of gods, or hell, even poor old Robert Johnson falling to his knees at those crossroads and sinking down. However the language reaches us, the notion has always been fused into our human marrow, and they're in perpetual bloom, these divergent points from which everything will be or know hereafter will flow. Because the transformations are usually minute, almost all of these life-changing instances pass unnoticed, like drops of water swirling around a stone in a river, or the weightless strands of straw stuffed into the saddlebag. But every now and then, one of those drops comes along and it rocks the stone from its setting. One of the weightless strands breaks the back. In Clint Eastwood's 2003 Academy Award-nominated film Mystic River, the earth-shifting divergent point for Dave, Sean, and Jimmy happens on the teeth-gnashing streets of blue-collar Boston when they're 11 years old. They're scratching their names into the wet cement of the sidewalk when a couple of creeps pulls up alongside them, scares the ever-living shit out of them, and abducts Dave, the only one whose stone signature wasn't complete. The boy is subjected to unseen horrors for 4 days before escaping from the basement in which the pedophiles have imprisoned him, but he was never destined to escape. Not really. 20-some-odd years later, the boys have grown to men and have forged lives distinct and disconnected from one another. Well, by superficial reckoning at least, because before long they find their lives re-enmeshed with one another's. Jimmy, the bulldog of the crew, has become an ex-con with strong ties to low-level organized crime in the old neighborhood, and on the day we pick back up with him, his daughter, whom he loves with holy devotion, is brutally murdered and dumped like garbage in a ditch. Perhaps by chance, perhaps not. On the very same night, Dave, who's struggling to maintain a guise of normality in the long streaming wake of his abuse, returns home to his wife at 3 a.m, covered with blood. The third of the trio, Sean, has somehow made it out of the neighborhood, through college, and has become a detective for the Boston PD. He's on the case to find Jimmy's daughter's murderer before Jimmy and his thug lackeys do. On the surface, what follows is a taut crime investigation picture, replete with intricate plot turns, convincing red herrings, and surprise revelations. But what makes this film brilliant has nothing to do with crime thriller genre convention. Rather, the beauty of the story lies in its remarkably fully realized characters. Characters who are in the throes of trying to overcome complex and realistic human hardship. Scripted by Brian Helgeland, as adapted from the novel of the same name by Dennis Lehane, the characters are breathtakingly rendered by perhaps the best ensemble cast of the 2000s. The cast list contains some of the greatest actors of our generation: Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, Kevin Bacon, Laura Linney, Marcia Gay Harden, Lawrence Fishburne. Hell, it would be difficult not to make something good with these folks. They're fascinating to watch, all of them, and Sean Penn's performance is more a force of nature than a work of art. When his character cries out for his dead daughter, you can almost hear the angels in heaven and the devils of hell weeping in unison through his voice. As a veteran actor, Clint Eastwood understands more than most that the power of a film like this lies in the performances of his cast, which fact is almost certainly what attracted him to the work in the first place. Now, I haven't followed and so can't comment on his recent schizoid political vaudeville acts, so I'm going to leave it out of the equation here. It'd be a disservice to the film, I think, to read it through the context of his political chicanery. I do know, however, just from watching his work, that his direction is informed by the greats of classic cinema, masters of the old guard like John Ford and Howard Hawks and Don Siegel, the latter from whom he learned filmmaking firsthand, and so he understands that sometimes the best way to tell a story is to tell it simply, to just let it play out on the human faces in front of the camera. The film is beautifully shot and edited, no doubt, but Eastwood doesn't muddy the water with flashy cinematic trickery. There's no distracting look-at-me directorial pyrotechnics that a younger or lesser film director might have been unable to resist. Eastwood's been a cornerstone of filmmaking for more years than seems possible, and though his films at first glance may not have the fingerprint singularity of pictures we normally associate with director as auteur, a calmer assessment soon reveals his work to be a reflection of the man himself. His films are cool and confident, stoic, and utterly potent. In fact, considering that the studios were lukewarm about Mystic River, and Eastwood consequently agreed to be paid minimum scale wage to get it made. It's hard not to see his films, and this one in particular, as the personal expression of an artist, though I suspect he'd bristle at a statement like that. If I were forced to lodge a complaint or two about the film, I'd say that first it suffers from a trapping of the genre that we jaded cinephiles see coming a mile away. Serious spoilers follow here, so if you haven't seen the film, fast forward a minute or two. We all know that in a crime mystery sort of thriller like Mystic River, the big star actor who is painted up as guilt red as a herring is in no way, not in a million years, going to be found ultimately guilty in the third act. And that the, quote, least suspicious character, unquote, who has any sort of screen time at all is the one who's going to turn out with blood on his hands. It's distracting and predictable. I remember walking out of the theater the first time I saw this and saying, you know what might have been interesting is if the guy that the film makes the apparent guilty criminal actually is guilty when everything comes out in the wash. That would have been a surprise ending. I know that's cheeky, but there might be something to it. Anyway, it seems like something needs to throw some sort of variable into the formula. Secondly, though I haven't read the novel, my cursory inquiries show that one of the major changes that took place in the adaptation process is that in the book, as a byproduct of his abuse, the Robbins character was beginning to have pedophilic impulses and murdered as a way to metaphorically murder those same impulses. And this went wholly unaddressed in the film. I can probably guess the reasons why it wasn't dealt with, but none of them seem really convincing to me. If Eastwood's intent was to take a real hard look at the real hard knocks life throws at real hard folks like Dave in this picture, this should have been dealt with, no matter how uncomfortable or financially unviable. The heart of the film, after all, is how people cope with difficult, uncomfortable situations. Now, somewhere near the end of the film, Jimmy says, sometimes I think all three of us got in that car that day, and in reality, we're still 11-year-old boys locked in that cellar. And that's about right when it comes to those big sea-changing moments I spoke about earlier. When those pivot points come, a part of you gets frozen there on the spot, like Dave, whose name is suspended halfway written forever. The flesh that moves on from that pinpoint is just a ghost of you, and in some ways you're walking dead, as Dave struggles to articulate to his wife. You never really get up off your knees after you sink down to them on those crossroads after all. Thing is, after watching the film and thinking about it this past day or so, it seems to me that there are two types of quantum events from which a life diverges. There are those you choose which path to take, and those where that sadistic cunt called life chooses it for you. The kind that happens in this picture where some demon creep snatches you away from your life in progress and steals your soul but doesn't quite kill you. Well, I'm glad to have been assigned this film this week. It gives me an excuse to say that if I have one wish for anyone out there who can hear my voice right now, it's that I wish that you have the strength and blind luck to get to choose your road many, many more times than it gets imposed upon you.
Good job, Joseph.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, such an underdeveloped intro. I gotta Joe, before he reads his intro, everyone, he's like, this is something I just threw together, but it was absolutely fantastic. And you hit on so many great points, Joe. Seriously.
Well, usually I watch the film about 3 or 4 days before I write. You know what I mean? So I get suggesting a little bit, and I watched this one yesterday morning while the usual stuff was going on in my house, and I was distracted and this and that, so I rushed to write that. So anyway,
but you're right. What's great about Eastwood here and his directing is that he there's it's very formulaic. What's going on here, and to be able to develop this high level of sadness and darkness throughout this whole film is really impressive. And it makes me think again about something, Billy, I think, said one time, I think we were doing Sidney Lumet, and Billy's just like, you know what? He goes, sometimes, the best thing to do is just put the camera in front of the actor and let them do their thing. And,
that's right.
And it's, and that speaks loudly, man, because...
Well, there's that John Ford anecdote who Eastwood admired greatly, mm-hmm. And he said, they were shooting The Searchers, I think, or something, Billy, and John Wayne goes to, Ford, he says, what are we going to shoot right now? He says, well, the only thing that's worth shooting, the human face.
Joe, with that being said, I have to applaud what Eastwood does here. I think this is a really good film. I really do. It's highly emotional. I mean, it captures me. I'm a sucker, though. I get very emotional during films rather easily, where I'll wind up liking, films like Babel, which or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which Billy hates, both those movies. But I get involved. I invest my soul into some of these things. As cheesy as it might be to others. I really dig this movie a lot, man, and these performances are extraordinary. I mean, just watching Sean Penn do anything, just watching him do anything is something I adore.
Dude, that scene where he's trying to get at his daughter's
I
body.
cried, man. I broke
Oh my
down.
God,
I
dude.
broke down. I broke down. I mean, it's just I mean, this is why he's probably like the best, Joe. He's one of the best.
It's incredible, man. He's certainly one of the best of his generation, that's for sure. Dude, that scene is just, it's like, it goes beyond acting. You know what I mean? Like, it transcends the form. Like, when an artist can transcend their medium or whatever, I know, like, this is incredibly hyperbolic, but I mean, just that's a moment right there where it's almost beyond
Well,
acting to
he's
me.
Emily Rossum, who plays his daughter, who was on the on that table, dead, said that she's playing dead, and the scene where Sean Penn comes in and tells her that he will find the person who did this to her. She said that she it was tough because she was holding back tears, laying there playing dead.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how emotional. It's like this guy walks into a room to do a scene, and he just takes all this energy, and he somehow just gives you something that is remarkable, and I
Yeah.
love him for it. I mean, I watch anything that he does. He puts his same heart and soul into what he does behind the camera as well. I mean, the movies that he's directed, I also find, to
Yeah.
be a treat.
Into the Wild is one of my favorite. This is definitely in my top 10
Yeah, yeah. I
films.
mean, it's great stuff. I want to get Billy involved because I'm really curious to see how he feels about this film. It is an emotional roller coaster ride, and I know Billy sometimes gets, I think it was a little bit sappy, a little bit over the top, but I'm curious to hear what Billy thinks about Clint Eastwood's take on Mystic River.
I think I'm going to be in the minority.
Oh,
I really don't like Mystic River. I think I don't know. I don't get it. I
yeah.
just don't get it. The I have a beef with two major plot problems as I see them.
Okay.
One, that is one hell of a coincidence that Tim Robbins kills someone the same night that girl
Yeah.
gets killed in the same
Billy just
friggin'
can't let
neighborhood.
something go.
I know.
Can't let
Suspension of
go.
disbelief.
Or just,
That's
sometimes shit happens, Billy. Crazy.
yeah.
That's right.
Sometimes shit does happen,
That's why
but
they're good stories.
yeah, I guess so. But the other one is I am totally not convinced when Tim Robbins quote, and obviously everyone's spoilers galore. I'm not convinced of Tim Robbins' confession at the end of that movie. I don't understand what the fuck he's doing. I don't understand why he's confessing to something that he didn't do.
Yeah.
And the whole process of Sean Penn seeking revenge on this guy it just feels rushed. You're rushing towards the formulaic tragic climax of the thing. I mean, I'm not convinced of it, you
Well,
know?
his confession there is,
Yeah, can anyone explain to me why he
he's extremely
confesses?
intoxicated, first of all. Like, you have to throw that in there. I mean, the guy was doing a lot of drinking. He didn't eat. And, I'm just trying to make
You have
excuses for
very specific reasons for this stuff.
I would read, like, if I was to conjecture what was going on in the novel, I would say thematically,
Yep.
these guys had this happenstance that was this major turning point in their lives, and then they diverged from there, and then they all reconverged at that moment. So at that moment, he's released finally, because he's never really alive. Like, after that first moment happens when he's abducted and abused, he's never alive after that. So at that point, he's released, and Mercy finally finds him, and he's killed. And I think that on some level he understands that, and I think that
I get that, but I think
he and
Not good
he's
enough, Joe. We got
but also the other two characters were also released to some degree. You know what I mean? Like it's the closing of that episode for them. You know, all three of them. Like right at that moment, Kevin Bacon uh, arrest, and Sean Penn, you know, closes whatever.
So what, at
And I
the
think
end of
that
the
there's a lot.
movie,
But here's what I think happened. Actually, I think that there's so much. I think the novel is probably so dense and has so much thematic stuff in there that's all interchanged together. Like I think all that stuff with the Ray Housen or Heisen Hansen character or whatever, I think that in the novel probably plays a really big part
What,
in the
just
thematic
Ray,
underpinnings of just like
just the
things
main
that
character?
like things that happen, and then your life moves on from there, and then you have to somehow come to terms with that and resolve those points where your life turned. You know what I mean? And I think in the film and I could be completely mistaken since I haven't read the novel, but I think that probably what happened is that things got shorthanded, you know,
I
for the
just think
movie.
it's trying to play too. It's trying to, have its cake and eat it too. You can't. Okay, take this as an alternate structure. You don't know anything that happened to the Tim Robbins character. You can only observe what other people have observed. So by the end, like if I remember correctly in the structure of the movie, by the time you get to the beach and they're gonna kill Tim Robbins and he confesses to the murder he didn't do, you already know that he killed the pedophile in the car, right?
Mm.
So how about the audience doesn't know that, and they're
Yeah.
left to suspect this guy also, and you pile up all these differing bits of evidence that could sway your opinion one way or the other. And so some of the audience is going to be rooting for the guy to die, and some are going to be saying, no, no, don't kill him. And some are going to, like, but you've been spoon fed this thing, and then you
I actually think that you're led to believe that he's guilty for almost all of the film until sort of like
Yeah, so you're
probably
deliberately
a
being led
handful
to
of.
like the structure is just
Yeah,
shit to
I
me. You're
know.
being led to suspect this guy, and then there's this magical. To me, it's the one of the worst Deus Ex Machinas ever. That his character is reeled back into sanctity by and the fact that he still murders someone. And that's like in your mind as an audience member, it's supposed to absolve him of the guilt of murdering someone else. It's like it's just so wrongheaded on so many
Well,
levels.
yeah, and see, I think those were the two issues that I kind of brought up, like that contrivance there with, you know, you're led to believe that somebody's guilty, and you know that they're going to be changed. Like, yeah, I totally see, I
Like
totally see that.
coincidence that this guy killed someone on the same night that this other girl got murdered. I can accept that. The fact that it's the friend of the guy whose daughter was murdered, and he's a would be pedophile.
Yeah,
I hate when
Everybody's
he does this,
suspecting of him.
Joe.
I know,
It's
but
just shit.
again,
I'm
I
so
get.
insulting.
Joe, he ruins everything. I can't deal with this.
Insulting. It's insulting. Now, let me say this. I like the theme of the movie, and I like the theme of the Tim Robbins character because there's this idea of scapegoating in the movie that is very powerful. And I wish the reason this upsets me is because the theme of this poor kid who's basically marked for life like Cain, he's gonna walk through life with people looking at him sideways for forever and ever. Right. And I like that theme. And Dennis Lehane, I've read a bunch of his books. He's really good at
Yeah,
doing that. Very baller. He's very he's very passionate about the real things that happen to people in real life.
yeah.
And I love that theme and the fact that these plot contrivances distract from that good theme. That's what just pisses me off. I
You know,
can't talk.
Billy, it's funny you say that because what I really wound up thinking about over the next 24 hours after watching this was how you could take like a character like Dave Boyle, you know, who has this horrible, horrible thing happen to him by a criminal, and then in its aftermath, it's almost like these victims they become criminals themselves, like in a sense where they're marked, like you're saying, you know, and it's like, you know, they become.
Well, that's why I would love to see the version of the movie that deals with him like starting to feel like he's having pedophilic tendencies, you know, like that's the continuation of that.
That's I think that the novel
Violence
probably
gets violence, you know.
I think a lot of the stuff that feels like contrivances in the film is probably worked out on a deep thematic level in the novel, and I'm almost tempted to go and read the book just just out of curiosity to see. I think I probably will, but it felt like that to me.
Yo, Adam,
Like
you a sucker for this movie like Joe and I?
Yeah, I am. I think it's a great film. It is flawed. It's not a perfect film. It's far from it. And the things you guys have pointed out are exactly its flaws. And absolutely, why not? Why pull punches? Why not? See Dave fighting off these urges? Because then maybe it does this in the book. I'm sure. Like you said, Joe, I'm sure it runs so much deeper. But maybe then when he's confessing to these crimes of thought, or these crimes of of what he's feeling, that the urges that he's having.
It's an interesting idea,
right?
Right. And then suddenly it runs. The whole thing runs a little deeper, and who knows why they started pulling punches. And that again is that one element that kept this from being just a classic.
Right. So you're saying that in that confession at the end, if Eastwood would have planted some of those like pedophilic, tendencies that Boyle obviously has in the novel, then that confession becomes a whole lot more.
Absolutely, because that's a guilty man confessing his sins to his old friend. Yeah, absolutely.
Or just the thought of having the thought of that in your head.
Right.
Absolutely. So then what? So by admitting that, it's basically he's killing off. He's finally finding at the same point he's finally finding release from.
He's asking for
that imprisonment.
And
he's getting mercy.
But can we simply just think that might be going on there anyway with this Dave Boyle character?
Because
he doesn't want to live anymore. I mean, is that
this
possible?
movie is shit, Tom? Just accept it.
I'm not accepting it. I get emotional during this movie. So any movie that could move me in any way, whether I have a smile, whether my heart's beating because it's thrilling, or because it's sad, like I really think this one is. I mean, I'll back it, man. I get it, Billy. I get exactly what you're saying. What annoys me is that like you say it and you're right, and now it's like.
Now I've ruined
Billy's
the movie
like Debbie Downer on the on Saturday Night Live. Like,
it's like
everybody's having a good time. And
I always wanted to go back and watch Babel again because I really liked it when we did that movie a year or two ago. And
how dare you
can't go back and watch it because it completely ruined it.
I'm so sorry. So let's see. So far, I like Ted. I'm split vote on Eddie Coyle, and I hate Mystic River. So
let me ask you this: you'll endorse Ted over Mystic River?
Yeah, I would never want to be quoted as saying that.
Oh my God, Billy, you kill me, man.
I'm so sorry,
Adam. I think
this is another one. The locations in Boston, though, are exemplary, aren't they? It's the most. It's hands down the most beautiful movie I've ever seen about like the actual neighborhoods north of Boston. Like I guess it's, what is it? Charleston is where this one is shot.
I think it's probably supposed to be up in that. Up in that general area, I would imagine. Somewhere over by the Mystic River. So I guess that's a little more towards the south side, right?
Is that where that's at? I don't even.
I think so. Gotcha. I think that's a little more to the south side, actually. Over by Mystic River, but just when you're walking through those streets, and you are kind of like Eddie Coyle, Friends of Eddie Coyle. It just feels like you're in that city. It just feels like you're down in there with them, and these are the people that live there. And it feels a little gritty, a little dirty, a little rundown, and it just helps set that dark theme, which just runs through the dark heaviness.
This film. Does that more than the any of the three films here, that we've done over the past 2 weeks. It really puts you there, really captures that feel. I think more than the other two films. And I hate to compare Mystic River to Ted in any sense.
No, Tom.
I'm glad that we are.
But that's hey, Adam. What's really fascinating too, real quick, is Kevin Bacon, who plays Sean Devine in this movie, was a second choice. As a matter of fact, they had to recast that role, which was originally given to Michael Keaton.
Wow.
Yeah, Keaton was all
worked.
set and ready to go. He got into a little tiff with Eastwood about something. Eastwood got rid of him, and just a week or two, I think, before shooting, they got Bacon to do it instead. And I like Kevin Bacon a lot, actually, guys. I always
Michael
have.
Keaton is with us this episode. He
Michael
he
Keaton is
hovers
awesome.
above and watches all of our actions, good and bad.
He's been with us, man. Billy, you have no idea. It's like he keeps popping up for some reason.
That's funny.
I sense some great things
It's
for
the
Michael
Birdman.
Keaton.
The Birdman is flying
Yeah.
high above us.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it, by the way. Birdman.
Me too. I'm so looking forward to seeing Birdman.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Clint Eastwood's the director here. I mean, we're talking about Mystic River. Billy, he's been behind the camera obviously quite a few times in his career now. More so later in his career. Unforgiven. Can you get behind that? I mean, is there anything that this man has directed that you're like, yeah, you know what, this guy's something special? Was it Space Cowboys maybe for you?
Yours truly, Space Cowboys. Go fuck yourself.
What about Bird? I mean, Bird is an extraordinary film, I think, with Forrest Whitaker.
Clint Eastwood is hit and miss for me. He's very, very. I always feel like I'm a little too far ahead of him in his movies. Like I don't know if it's the pacing or he's very conservative in the way that he shoots movies.
Yeah.
But it's hit and miss. I thought $1 Million Baby was great.
You like that? You like $1 Million?
Yeah, I liked.
That was the big one too. With this, he kind of does $1 Million Baby and Mystic River back to back, I think.
Right.
And they were both like,
they're both Brian Helgeland scripts too, I think.
Oh wow!
But the believe it or not, I know this is nuts, but The Bridges of Madison County, I think is a great romance. Like the flashback scenes, or rather the flash forward scenes, like all the contemporary stuff, I think is awful. But the anything with Eastwood and oh Jesus, why am I forgetting her name?
Streep.
Meryl.
Yeah. It's just amazing. And Unforgiven, I think it's a Western masterpiece.
I have said this.
I'm with you on that.
Do you, Adam? Because I know Joe loves Unforgiven too, right, Joe?
I do.
I have tried putting on Unforgiven probably 4 or 5 times in my life, and I tune out after 20, 30 minutes.
You can't take Westerns.
I'm not a fan of
It's a Western thing for you because it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of the genre.
Right, but I could
he only likes Westerns if Bon Jovi's doing the soundtrack.
I've seen Pale Rider. See, that's not funny, Joe.
Shot. Damn.
And I like Young Guns and Young Guns too. So go fuck yourself.
Oh, the
so
sequel.
this means won't Seth MacFarlane's A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah, I will watch it. He's, I'm gonna watch it, sure, but I haven't seen it yet.
I liked Pale Rider back.
I love Pale
I haven't
Rider.
seen Pale Rider in a long time.
I saw Pale Rider in the drive-in movie theater when I was a kid, and I love that movie. And
High Plains Drifter, The Outlaw Josie Wells, these are fucking phenomenal
They're all
Western
amazing.
films.
He directed every one of them.
See, but okay, so Gran Torino, did you guys see that?
Thought it was great.
I thought there was a lot of good in that movie, but it to me has the same sort of Mystic River problem that I feel like he sort of rams through plot contrivances for the sake of making a statement, and then it becomes kind of preachy, a little bit, and it's too contrived, like, and I can't explain it, but a bunch of his movies I feel that in a little bit, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know
he put like
stylistic thing or
like in Mystic River, he put that bishop's ring on the older man in the car, and that wasn't at all referenced in the novel whatsoever. And he's just doing that because at the time of the film there was all that stuff going on in the Catholic Church, so he was just like making a political statement there by doing that. It's interesting.
All right, Tom, I'm going to program all Clint Eastwood Westerns for the next episode.
Hey, dude, and I'll watch them, man. I will watch them. I will talk about them. I'll do an intro if you'd like, whatever you want, Bill. I would do it. And I would go, listen, if I was assigned Unforgiven, I would sit from beginning to end, of course, But I don't know what it is, guys. This movie has eluded me. I have tried to do it. I've been in a mood where I'm like, I'm going to watch Unforgiven. I mean, I've given up like the past 5 years, but I have at least 4 or 5 times put the DVD in the player, press
He's
play.
been trying to watch the film for 20 years.
I have been. It's true, man. It's fucked up, and I can't get into it, you know? Again, I have no problem with Pale Rider. I think that's a beautiful movie.
What about Jersey Boys? Tom,
haven't
Joe, opinions on that?
I haven't seen I have not
I
seen Jersey,
refuse to watch that film.
but I did not like J. Edgar at all. You know, and again, that's a movie I wanted to like, and I couldn't get into it. You know, I watched it, didn't
Joe,
impress me.
you're not gonna get the kids together to watch that movie, do some song and dance numbers in the living room.
Jersey Boy.
Yeah.
No, I do not think I'm not a big Frankie Valli fan, so I'm gonna stay away from that one.
I can't believe we're talking about Clint Eastwood. We're just like popping jokes now. Like Jersey Boys, ha 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 ha. You know, it's fucking Clint Eastwood.
You started with Space Cowboys, man.
How could you not mention Space Cowboys? Do you remember, do you remember in Space Cowboys, guys, when they're like going back to when they're younger and they have these actors that like are trying so hard to look like Donald, what was it, Donald Sutherland, Tommy Lee Jones, Clint Eastwood, and they dubbed their voices.
Oh man.
Dude, it's so worth checking out because it's so ridiculous.
Adam, you're a big fan of Space Cowboys?
Well, saw it in the theaters.
Get the fuck out of here.
I did.
I did too, actually.
Max and I went to the AMC theaters at the local mall and saw that movie.
Max was there?
Yeah, Max and I saw.
Jeez Louise. You know, Billy, it doesn't surprise me. Hold on one second, Adam. I want you to finish your thought.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me, Billy, that you would go see Space Cowboys because you in science fiction, Billy's probably like, you know, Clint Eastwood, science fiction, finally. This is a dream come true.
Pretty much anything that, like, basically I just want to be in space. So any movie that gives me even, 20 minutes of feeling like I'm in space, I'm happy with. So
you get to go to space with McConaughey soon.
I am going to, this is how nerdy I am. I'm going to buy my tickets tomorrow. For a very specific time and place and screen, and it's going to be the IMAX 70 millimeter projection, and it's going to be
midnight, Billy.
No, I don't want to do a midnight show. I'm gonna pick a nice time and place after. See, I'm like the movie Nazi. I'm very specific about my movie going experience, so I don't want no midnight screening hijinks at all.
So you're doing it, man. You're going to go see Nolan's new movie.
Oh fuck yeah!
Because it's science fiction.
No, well,
you like Nolan?
I like Nolan in general. Yeah, I mean, I think Inception was a terrible fucking movie, but some of his other stuff, I thought it was awful.
Really?
It was it's a movie about dreams, and I've never had dreams like what this guy is showing to be. It's very.
Here he goes.
Yeah.
See, that doesn't happen, right? People don't dream that way.
Look, it's a big coincidence that Tim Robbins kills someone the same night that Emmy Rossum gets killed.
What about
it's Shakespearean? That's all. Just set the story.
That fucking wife of Tim Robbins in that movie, man. She gets her husband killed with her behavior.
Great, though?
She's awesome. Marcia Gay Harden is awesome. I'm with you. But that Celeste character, man, that is just awful.
It is pretty great about that this person has chosen to marry this other person, but still harbors the same scapegoating fear of him. Like she's still wondering always in the back of her head if he could ever be a creep.
She was terrified of him.
Yeah.
Man, it was, oh, man. And she basically gets him killed.
Yeah.
Which is fucked up. What's really funny, too, what struck me odd was the setting at the end. You're watching this, like 2 hours of sadness, and the whole film, like, it all culminates at a fucking parade, which is like, a parade's like, I mean, it's happiness, really. It was just bizarre. It was a bizarre setting.
Going back to something, Joe, I think you mentioned in the review, was like the theme of Tim Robbins. That last scene is like the three of them kind of coming to terms with themselves a little bit. Mm-hmm. And like looking at it from that perspective, that end scene with the parade is almost, I feel like it implied that the Sean Penn character is going to return to a life of crime, and
Right.
he's gonna allow that animal out of the cage, right?
Right.
And
And his wife
the Kevin
was
Bacon character, who's probably turned a blind eye to some of the shenanigans that Sean Penn.
He's gonna
say the cuffs are off, or the gloves are off.
I'm chasing after you,
and I'm coming after you. So basically, it's like Tim Robbins was dead, and he was released, and he was allowed to be dead, and that freed these other two. Released. This released the other two guys to be who they really should have been in the first place. So
wow,
I can kind of get behind that operatic sort of finale.
And it's funny, Adam. You said Shakespearean, and there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing more Shakespearean than that scene with Sean Penn with Robin Wright. Oh wait, no, not Robin Wright. I'm sorry, that's his real wife.
Yeah.
Laura Linney.
Right. It's like, no, we're not talking about State of Grace here.
But when they're in that bedroom and she's like emboldening him to take his command of the city or whatever.
That was a weird monologue.
That's what I was just about to say, Joe. That scene, that's so weird. And it's so funny because even her, I think there's a cleansing there with the daughter's death, because that's not her daughter. And Ken's character was so obsessed with his first daughter, which wasn't his wife's, his wife's daughter. And she just seemed like, she became free as well. And that she was, now that the daughter's gone, now that that's lifted from him, now it's time. You're right, Billy. It's time for him to be who
king of the jungle.
Yeah.
Well, it's
and also
where she says you can be king, and it is Lady Macbeth urging Macbeth on to be the king. And it's interesting because also Sean Penn's character, not only the daughter, but he still was in love with the ex-wife, but she had died. So now both of those women are gone, and so that's when Lenny steps in and says, "Now you're free to be the king."
Right.
That's who you are. Absolutely. Right. So that thematically, that's all there, and I do feel like it's very Shakespearean the way the story unfolds.
The women behind these guys are like the Kevin Bacon character. He has the pregnant wife who ran away. So So the Tim Robbins wife basically fulfills his destiny of killing him, of freeing him from a life of misery, and the Lady Macbeth frees him to be the king of the jungle. And what's going on with the pregnant wife who comes back to Kevin Bacon after a separation?
That's something that was glossed. I'm sure that something's going on in the novel. I swear, I gotta read this friggin' book now. Now I'm
now you're on a mission.
Yeah, now I'm sentenced to read this book because I know for sure that all this stuff is tied in, and as good as the film is, it's not. I know that the book is talking about all, because there's hints of thematic interconnection. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All this stuff happening, and it's like you can almost see it, but it's like you have to kind of like squint at it to see what's going on behind all that.
Because Clint Eastwood, he for I don't know, 15 years or so now, has basically averaged 2 movies a year.
Right.
And he's basically got the red carpet rolled out for him over at Warner Brothers, and he has full priority to get things done. But the reality is in 6 months, that means he's not very hands-on in pre-production and not very hands-on in post-production. And I'm curious. I would wonder how much he actually is involved when it comes down to the editing. My guess is they probably edit something together, show it to him. He gives some notes like the producer give notes, and then they fix it. But he's not in the editing room over the shoulder. So I think maybe even some of this is just lost in the way that these films are produced.
I wonder if he uses the same editor. That would be interesting.
Well, he definitely uses this guy who wrote the novel a lot. He uses his work a lot. Yeah.
Dennis Lehane, to go back to what you were kind of talking about a minute ago, Joe, the themes and everything, he is a really smart cookie. I wish that I could get into his books more, and I've tried, I've read maybe 3, and they don't really do it for me, but he himself in interviews is one of the most intelligent dudes you'll ever hear, and he knows what he's doing there. He's written a lot of that stuff as tragedy. He wrote Shutter Island also, which was not a great movie, but and I've read the novel, and it's not a great novel either. But what he's doing there is kind of brilliant, where he's fusing this gothic romance, this gothic horror story with with Cold War paranoia, and then the modern paranoia of the 9/11 age and everything. So he's definitely weaving that stuff in.
Yeah, you know what? I actually made a mistake. His cinematographer Hughes is often to a lot, like all the time. This guy, the writer here, is very prominent in Hollywood, and yes, you're right. He's done Shutter Island, and he's done a whole bunch of other films that have become very big, and they're all very smart films. Gone Baby Gone, yeah. They're all really smart films, and that you do feel that he's got a lot of interconnecting things going on. Yeah,
ticking away inside his head there.
Yeah, sure. He knows the constructions of a novel for sure.
It looks like to me over the past 14 years, when he really started to step up his game and concentrate on putting out movies once or twice a year, he basically uses the same people over and over again. The cinematographer, editor. Yeah. So that's what's probably going on, Adam, where he's putting that stuff into the hands of others, in post-production. And he just kind of oversees it.
Yeah, I would think so. And maybe, who knows, if he's working with the same guys, that might have nothing to do with it then in terms of sort of missing the mark in the areas we're talking about.
Yeah. All right.
Adam, is Max a big pain in the ass when you go to see movies that aren't horror or Jackass, like he is on the show? When we were talking about, I think we were talking before we were rolling here, how we're all afraid to program movies that we like because we're afraid that Max doesn't want to sit through them because he's bailed out on films before. Do you go and see actual other films that aren't horror and Jackass when?
It's rare. It's rare. We don't see movies together that often, and when we do, it's either in the context of a boys' night out, which we usually will go see a horror film specifically, or we're going to some premiere of some incarnation of Jackass. It's true. But no, there are so many movies over the years that we've enjoyed and we've shared that have nothing to do with subjects.
Can you get him to go see Inherent Vice with you when it comes out?
Can I get him to go see that with me?
Yeah.
Listen, if we're going to make a day out of it, we'll go see any movie. If we're bringing the magic backpack with a couple bottles of wine, and if we're making a day out of it, then yeah, sure, why not?
He'll go see it. He'll have no problem. He'll go into the theater, watch a movie, a Paul Thomas Anderson movie with you, because he hates.
I don't know PTA. I don't know if I could get him to see. Although he really enjoyed Punch Drunk Love. I know that.
Right.
That's one of my
I think this is going to be PTA in full Punch Drunk Love mode myself. The trailer for Inherent Vice looks great.
Yeah, I'm hopeful because it is it's a comedy basically, as Punch Drunk Love was a comedy, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe on this one I could get him to see it. I don't know if I could convince him to come over one night and watch Magnolia with me. But I don't think there's a lot of people I could convince to watch Magnolia with me.
You can definitely convince me, Adam. I do it anytime, man.
Well, I'm a huge PTA fan.
Yeah, me too.
It's Malick earlier. I'm a huge Malick fan.
But you said Billy. Yeah, well, Malick, I kind of go in and out of. I do like some of his stuff. Now, didn't Malick not do films for a while? Like he didn't make a movie in 20 years or something.
Well, yeah, he's only made 6 films in his career.
And he's been making films for 15 years. Yeah, but
he's been making up for lost time though. He's going gangbusters. He's got so many movies. If you go to IMDb, it's he's making up for lost time for sure.
Well, he works with a group of students, and and the students do a lot of the work on these films, and then he supervises. But you're right,
that's interesting.
Yo, Adam, what's the movie he did with Martin Sheen in the early 70s?
Badlands.
That was Badlands, which is based on a true story of a little killer couple on a serial killing spree across the heartland.
I always wanted to see that movie.
You gotta check that out, man.
Yeah,
so good.
Great film. It's just a great story. The true story is fantastic in terms of that kind of serial killer, Bonnie and Clyde style.
Yeah. It's pretty loosely adapted, obviously, from the thing, but it's the same. Isn't there a Bruce Springsteen song based on the same thing, same story? I believe so.
Is
Nebraska.
Off in Nebraska?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Malik is interesting, man. Like, he's definitely. I love the Tree of Life, Joe. Like that was something else.
My wife got to work on that one. She cut sound on that one.
Oh wow.
It was very cool. She kind of worked back to back with Malik, and actually it was a few years apart. And P.T. Anderson, she worked on There Will Be Blood, so not back to back at all, actually. But she's worked with like two of my all-time picks.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Very cool, yeah.
Wow.
Actually, speaking of that, when she was up at Skywalker Sound working on There Will Be Blood, Sean Penn was in post up there doing Into the Wild, and according to my wife, they were having trouble getting work done because Sean Penn kept coming across and challenged them all to croquet matches out on the lawn.
Ah. Oh man, but yeah, you guys are right. Inherent Vice looks really funny. But you know what the funny thing, real quick, about Paul Thomas Anderson is, he has this ability to make me laugh in like every movie. Like, even The Master, like that fight scene in the furniture store,
beautiful,
like, is one of the most.
That is an absolute goddamn classic. That scene is.
Yeah, isn't that just amazing? That scene.
How about the fight scene in There Will Be Blood? That is the equivalent of a slap fight.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Each other.
It's. Yeah, he's great. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Guys, I want to start wrapping things up. Joe, do you have any hijinks for us? Do you have any more questions?
I don't know.
You're the hijinks guy tonight.
I think I'm all out of hijinks. Where's Max when you need him? We need to be screaming at each other.
This is very hijinks.
When do we start talking about anal sex and going down on women? When did that happen? I thought that's a part of every show.
Do you think Tim Robbins? Do you think Tim Robbins was having anal sex with Marcia Gay Harden on the set of Mystic River?
It's evident in their performance.
Oh, she is friggin' evil. That character's evil. Oh, I can't get. She creeped me out, man. I'm telling you.
I love her though, man. Dude, she's so attractive. She was so attractive in Miller's Crossing. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. She was something else in that film.
Right. Fucking Miller's Crossing. I haven't watched that in a while. All right, guys. I'm going to say goodbye. I want to thank the three of you for doing this. Adam, great picks. Hopefully next season, I can't wait to hear what you have for us the next time.
Look forward to it, guys.
It's going to be awesome. Well, let's say goodbye to Adam, Joe, because he's done for the season.
Yeah, Adam. Hey, how's your film project going, bro?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, exactly. That's a great question because I had that in the back of my head. You did the pilot. Can you tell us anything about it? What's going on?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Yeah, we're getting very close. We're at the very end of post production. We just got it back from the color timer, so it looks beautiful. We're doing. We've got the original songs coming in, which is great, and we're kind of in the final phase here. So I'm guessing within maybe 30 days. Give or take, we should have something. But Starland PC, I will keep you guys posted if we end up putting some stuff up, which I'm sure we will online. I will point you guys in the right direction.
Tom, do we have his plugs in the show yet? I can't even focus on those plugs. They're so friggin' long now at this point.
All I got from Adam is Bowler Hat Productions from.
Oh, Adam, you were supposed to send me shit too.
Terrible. I know I'm terrible about self promotion. I'll tell you what though, I'm going to come in Blazing next season. I'm going to give you a little bio. I'm going to have the website up, and we'll promote the shit out of it.
And we'll definitely keep the listeners posted, Adam. If you come out with a scene, a clip, a trailer, anything for the show,
that'd be awesome. I will definitely keep you guys in the loop on all that, of course.
And now is Max in the project?
Yes, he is. No, I know a little bit about this because they were talking about this. I think Max has in the pilot, if I'm correct, Max has like a small part in the pilot, but his character he plays out in a bigger role through the course of the season, right, Adam?
Exactly. The way that we've got it structured out is that he's actually a significant character, but we really don't meet his character until episode 2. But I wasn't going to shoot the pilot without having him involved in some way. So he has little cameos as different characters, and there's some VO that he does. So he's throughout it in many different forms, sort of in secret, and then his character is revealed in the second episode.
There you go. What's his character's name, Adam?
His character right now is his name is Hunter Phelan.
That's awesome.
He's something of a shock jock.
You know what I would have called his character if I were you? Jeff.
Oh, you would not have appreciated that.
I swear to God, I would do it. I'm not kidding around, Joe.
That's
Although in the first episode he plays Rabbi Shloimi for a kosher mayonnaise commercial.
Well, Max, he's real hard at work right now. I know it's past Halloween at this point.
Oh, I got to look at his Halloween.
But, for our listeners, check out Max Cook's Halloween Hell Show over there.
He always outdoes himself on that. Yeah,
I'm going to put that on the site.
It's really, really different this year. So he's outdone himself, Mr. Max. No more Brandon, the disgruntled goth kid. None of that stuff. He's going for a whole new thing here.
He's bringing things to new levels.
Yeah, he totally is.
He's always pushing the envelope. It's all good.
Oh man. Hey Joe, you two real quick, you got anything going on the festival circuit?
Not right now. No. I just had
edit that out.
I mean, I'm waiting to hear from a couple of places, but it was just shown at the.
I thought you had something brewing. Jesus.
It's going to be shown on Australian television pretty soon. Man.
Oh, there you go, Joe.
Yeah, Meat Cycle.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, excited about that. It was quite an honor for it to show at the Montreal Film Festival, and then somebody give me a ring and asked if they can show it on the TV over there. So that was pretty cool, man. So
good job, Joe. You're doing great.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Way to go. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited.
That's what I have going on, Tom, is the cutting room. My creative energies are focused on the cutting room.
You only have 2 episodes left here.
Yeah. Christiana Productions.
It's almost over for season 4.
Who
is that? Will you stop doing that?
I believe that's Adam.
The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. Billy. He's like Eddie Coyle. He's the rat here. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. Shut up. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is
seriously the same night those 2 people were killed. Seriously.
Let's revisit that.
But because think how boring the story would have been if they didn't happen on the same night.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing
you can't walk into a social situation and tell a story about nothing that happened. You're going to tell them the story about something that was unique and extraordinary that happened.
Well, exactly.
Why doesn't Hamlet kill his uncle? Because then there wouldn't be a Hamlet.
Yeah, the example I use is, who would give a shit if Charlie didn't find the golden ticket? I don't give a shit about this poor little kid, but the kid won. I want to go to the fucking chocolate
factory. Go to the factory, man.
What a boring ass story. If the kid was just a loser, it didn't ever get
Willy Wonka. Oh my! Hey Joe, Billy and Max next week.
Yes, I'm sure Billy's really looking forward to that. It was so funny because on that Halloween show, I was like, "Oh God, thank God!" I was like, "Thank God Billy's not on this right now." He definitely would have left.
I would have quit for the 15th time.
Yeah. Hey guys, I gotta go.
Yeah. All right, let me do this. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited and co-produced by Joseph Schreck, thanks Joe, and produced by Thomas Detloff and Joe Christiana. You can like us on Facebook. Get over there and do it at the Cutting Room Movie Podcast, and follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff at TCRM Podcast. You can also check out Joe's film work, ChristianaProductions.com. Max's new blog, MaxCookUncorked.com. Go over there and check it out. And also, Max and Adam's Bowler Hat Productions and their Mimosa podcast show at MaxCookandTheCounselor.com. Dave Pace. Oh, we love you, Dave. Dave Pace is now a contributing writer at Rue Morgue Magazine. Look for his work over there. And check out his blog on horror media politics at La Politique, Psychotronique, and Psychotronique.anidealforliving.com. You know that the music from The Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. Check them out at www.thezillatones.com or search for the Zillatones at ReverbNation.com. We're going to be back next week, and hopefully Billy will have a movie picked out for us. Until then, we are over. Billy, We got to get this done, man. Until then, we are over. We are out. Ciao.
Tune in next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.
It's happening now. And now again. You feel that? There goes another one. Another pinpoint in time that's irrevocably changed everything forever. Another one of the universe's infinite axes we've just grabbed a hold of and spun around. Like snagging a pole while running full throttle. We've always known about these turning points, always talked about them. Whether it's Stephen Hawking's computer voice, outlining his impenetrable science of multiverse quantum physics, or the Hindus' cautious contemplations of an inexhaustible expanse of alternate universes, each ruled by a unique set of gods, or hell, even poor old Robert Johnson falling to his knees at those crossroads and sinking down. However the language reaches us, the notion has always been fused into our human marrow, and they're in perpetual bloom, these divergent points, from which everything will be or know hereafter will flow. Because the transformations are usually minute, almost all of these life-changing instances pass unnoticed, like drops of water swirling around a stone in a river, or the weightless strands of straw stuffed into the saddlebag. But every now and then, one of those drops comes along and it rocks the stone from its setting. One of the weightless strands breaks the back. In Clint Eastwood's 2003 Academy Award-nominated film Mystic River, the earth-shifting divergent point for Dave, Sean, and Jimmy happens on the teeth-gnashing streets of blue-collar Boston when they're 11 years old. They're scratching their names into the wet cement of the sidewalk when a couple of creeps pulls up alongside them, scares the ever-living shit out of them, and abducts Dave, the only one whose stone signature wasn't complete. The boy is subjected to unseen horrors for 4 days before escaping from the basement in which the pedophiles have imprisoned him. But he was never destined to escape. Not really. 20-some-odd years later, the boys have grown to men and have forged lives distinct and disconnected from one another. Well, by superficial reckoning at least, because before long they find their lives re-enmeshed with one another's. Jimmy, the bulldog of the crew, has become an ex-con with strong ties to low-level organized crime in the old neighborhood, and on the day we pick back up with him, his daughter, whom he loves with holy devotion, is brutally murdered and dumped like garbage in a ditch. Perhaps by chance, perhaps not. On the very same night, Dave, who's struggling to maintain a guise of normality in the long streaming wake of his abuse, returns home to his wife at 3 a.m, covered with blood. The third of the trio, Sean, has somehow made it out of the neighborhood, through college, and has become a detective for the Boston PD. He's on the case to find Jimmy's daughter's murderer before Jimmy and his thug lackeys do. On the surface, what follows is a taut crime investigation picture, replete with intricate plot turns, convincing red herrings, and surprise revelations. But what makes this film brilliant has nothing to do with crime thriller genre convention. Rather, the beauty of the story lies in its remarkably fully realized characters. Characters who are in the throes of trying to overcome complex and realistic human heart, or a lesser film director might have been unable to resist. Eastwood's been a cornerstone of filmmaking for more years than seems possible, and though his films at first glance may not have the fingerprint singularity of pictures we normally associate with director as auteur, a calmer assessment soon reveals his work to be a reflection of the man himself. His films are cool and confident, stoic, and utterly potent. In fact, considering that the studios were lukewarm about Mystic River, and Eastwood consequently agreed to be paid minimum scale wage to get it made, it's hard not to see his films, and this one in particular, as the personal expression of an artist, though I suspect he'd bristle at a statement like that. If I were forced to lodge a complaint or two about the film, I'd say that first it suffers from a trapping of the genre that we jaded cinephiles see coming a mile away. Serious spoilers follow here, so if you haven't seen the film, fast forward a minute or two. We all know that in a crime mystery sort of thriller like Mystic River, the big star actor who is painted up as guilt-red as a herring is in no way, not in a million years, going to be found ultimately guilty in the third act. And that the, quote, least suspicious character, unquote, who has any sort of screen time at all is the one who's going to turn out with blood on his hands. It's distracting and predictable. I remember walking out of the theater the first time I saw this and saying, you know what might have been interesting is if the guy that the film makes the apparent guilty criminal actually is guilty when everything comes out in the wash. That would have been a surprise ending. I know that's cheeky, but there might be something to it. Anyway, It seems like something needs to throw some sort of variable into the formula. Scripted by Brian Helgeland, as adapted from the novel of the same name by Dennis Lehane, the characters are breathtakingly rendered by perhaps the best ensemble cast of the 2000s. The cast list contains some of the greatest actors of our generation: Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, Kevin Bacon, Laura Linney, Marcia Gay Harden, Lawrence Fishburne. Hell, it would be difficult not to make something good with these folks. They're fascinating to watch, all of them, and Sean Penn's performance is more a force of nature than a work of art. When his character cries out for his dead daughter, you can almost hear the angels in heaven and the devils of hell weeping in unison through his voice. As a veteran actor, Clint Eastwood understands more than most that the power of a film like this lies in the performances of his cast, which fact is almost certainly what attracted him to the work in the first place. Now, I haven't followed and so can't comment on his recent schizoid political vaudeville acts, so I'm going to leave it out of the equation here. It'd be a disservice to the film, I think, to read it through the context of his political chicanery. I do know, however, just from watching his work, that his direction is informed by the greats of classic cinema, masters of the old guard like John Ford and Howard Hawks and Don Siegel, the latter from whom he learned filmmaking firsthand, and so he understands that sometimes the best way to tell a story is to tell it simply, to just let it play out on the human faces in front of the camera. The film is beautifully shot and edited, no doubt, but Eastwood doesn't muddy the water with flashy cinematic trickery. There's no distracting look-at-me directorial pyrotechnics that a younger... Secondly, though I haven't read the novel, my cursory inquiries show that one of the major changes that took place in the adaptation process is that in the book, as a byproduct of his abuse, the Robbins character was beginning to have pedophilic impulses and murdered as a way to metaphorically murder those same impulses. And this went wholly unaddressed in the film. I can probably guess the reasons why it wasn't dealt with, but none of them seem really convincing to me. If Eastwood's intent was to take a real hard look at the real hard knocks life throws at real hard folks like Dave in this picture, this should have been dealt with, no matter how uncomfortable or financially unviable. The heart of the film, after all, is how people cope with difficult, uncomfortable situations. Now, somewhere near the end of the film, Jimmy says, "Sometimes I think all three of us got in that car that day, and in reality we're still 11-year-old boys locked in that cellar." And that's about right when it comes to those big sea-changing moments I spoke about earlier. When those pivot points come, a part of you gets frozen there on the spot, like Dave, whose name is suspended halfway written forever. The flesh that moves on from that pinpoint is just a ghost of you, and in some ways you're walking dead, as Dave struggles to articulate to his wife. You never really get up off your knees after you sink down to them on those crossroads after all. Thing is, after watching the film and thinking about it this past day or so, it seems to me that there are two types of quantum events from which a life diverges. There are those you choose which path to take, and those where that sadistic cunt called life chooses it for you. The kind that happens